welcome to another episode of Grounds for Development, your go-to source for all things NXT, NXT UK, and 205 Live. We are coming at you with another new episode. Last week we covered the Takeover special, so we're going to cover a couple weeks of shows here. Keep you up to date on what's happening. I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host. Biff Kensington, how are you doing today, Biff?
I actually showed up on the set of The Walking Dead, and they almost actually had me arrested thinking I was a legitimate zombie. I am haggard as all get out right now. I feel like I have, I don't know, just like some sort of malicious, dreaded malaise that's just fallen over me. I think it's the post-takeover swoon. But we'll get through it. We'll get through it because, by golly, we're professionals, and that's what we're paid to do.
There you go. Well, we hope you feel better, and hopefully this talk will buoy your spirits and your immune system.
Absolutely. There ain't nothing better than talking NXT and 205 Live with my good buddy Greg the Hold. Even though you are enjoying that, glorious, Canadian healthcare system up there where you don't have to worry about your lungs flying out of your chest. So,
socialism does have its benefits at times.
Well, I'm not going to dignify that with a response because Chris and Don Sal could be listening. So there's no Red Brigade, here tonight. We're Team Laissez-Faire, Austrian, Supply Side, Free Side, Colonel Flag. So I just riddled off like 50 unconnected references there from like 1950 to 1999. So maybe we should just get straight into the wrestling because my ass ain't gonna make sense tonight.
Sounds good. We're gonna start with NXT UK.
I think we've got to because I think out of all the shows, NXT UK has made the biggest impact, especially here today. We've definitely got some stuff coming in the near future that warrants some conversation. That's good places I need to start.
Sounds good. So over the last 2 weeks, we've seen NXT UK be very heavy on the women's side. They have their tournament going on with to crown the first ever UK Women's Champion. That happened today, last night, I guess. And started off from 2 weeks ago. We had Xia Brookside versus Rhea Ripley. Ripley wins that match. And then you had Toni Storm versus Isla Dawn. That was a heck of a match from what I remembered there. Then we moved into Dakota Kai versus Rhea Ripley and Toni Storm versus Ginny. Toni Storm versus Ginny was a stellar match on that week. Dakota Kai and Rhea Ripley was really good too. And that led us into our finals, which ended up happening this week here. Crowning the new women's champion, we have Rhea Ripley defeating Toni Storm. What are your thoughts on that, Biff?
Well, I think the entire tournament really showcased the strengths that NXT UK is going to bring to the table, and that is a very robust women's division. There's a lot of talent in this show right now. I think the challenge for the showrunners is going to be to really get an equitable distribution of that talent. There's so many good people working in that company right now. Dakota Kai is really great. Jenny is amazing in her character work. Toni Storm is going to be a megastar. Rhea Ripley has the it factor. And that's not even going into the rest of the people that are going to be on the periphery. Of course, we'll have to wait and see if Tegan Knox ends up in NXT UK when she heals or she goes back to Florida. There's so much talent and there's so much potential there I think this tournament did a really good job of showcasing, what the show can do when it's operating at full strength. Rhea Ripley, I'm a huge fan of Rhea Ripley. I've been a fan since I saw her in the Mae Young Classic this year. She came in with an attitude. That attitude has served her well. She just looks like a star. She's got a physical presence about her that kind of helps her tower over her opponents, I think. And I think that really helps establish her as kind of this predominant Rudo heel character that she's trying to evolve. Toni Storm, I got to be honest, I would have expected Toni Storm to have walked out as the first UK Women's Champion. I'm kind of glad that she didn't, because I think the money is in the chase with Toni. Now she's got the big bad heel to go after, and I think there's a lot of money to be made in the chase here. And I think it's going to be a lengthy chase. I don't think we're going to see these two separated from each other for a while. I think this was just kind of a teaser for what's to come. The match itself, look, women's wrestling has come so far in this company. WWE, over the last 5 years, this is just the embodiment of what the women's evolution is all about. It was a fantastic match. It's the kind of match that you're going to go back and watch again. You're not content just to see it in one viewing. I call that the Bayley-Sasha syndrome from Brooklyn, where you'll see a match and you're just so enamored with it that you end up watching it, 2 or 3 times that week just to make sure it is as good as you thought it was. Can't say enough good things about their performance here. I like what they're doing with their women's division. It's really a win all around for me. I think that NXT UK, in terms of its overall strength, needs to be building around the women's division right now, because I think that's their strongest card to play. They have a great champion in Pete Dunne, and we know there's some good tag teams coming up, I should say, up into the system. But this women's tournament just demonstrates, I think, without a shadow of a doubt, their women's division is absolutely the strongest part of their show right now. And so why not ride the hot hand while you have it? All for it.
Absolutely. And just kind of touching on what you said there, like the age of these women that they have in here is just going to bodes well for our future. You got Rhea Ripley, who's 22, Toni Storm's 23. You got Millie McKenzie, who's 19 or something like that. You got like a ton of unbelievably talented women who are all under the age of 25. This is just boding amazingly for the future. And can we just touch on what is in the water down in Australia these days? The women's wrestlers that are coming out of Australia are just unbelievable. I mean, they're not doing much on the main roster right now, but if you've ever seen Peyton Royce and Billie Kay when they were working the independents, those women are extremely talented wrestlers as well. Then you got Toni Storm, you got Dakota Kai, you've got Rhea Ripley. Like Australian women's wrestling is just on fire right now.
Yep, got to throw some love to Emma, the former Emma, who's now Tennille Dashwood over at Ring of Honor. But she's definitely in that class as well. Yeah, the Australian wrestling scene has really exploded, kind of in conjunction with the rebirth of the British scene as well. I think that really, it's so weird. We were just talking about this the other day in a completely different context, but it works here too. Wrestling as an industry, it really felt like it took almost 5 to 10 years before the overall industry recovered from the early 2000s. Like when the WWE wound up winning the Monday Night War, we lost WCW, we lost ECW, WWE kind of stood alone, and then right at that same time, Lucha Libre kind of declined in Mexico. The Mexican promotions kind of declined a little bit. The Japanese promotions declined. All Japan was on the way down. The Four Pillars era had kind of collapsed. Inoki was infusing the MMA strong style into the promotion for the first time, and it wasn't working good. And there was, fears that New Japan was on the way out. So, when WWE won the Monday Night War, it almost sent shockwaves through the industry. Just a series of unfortunate influences wiped out so much. The Japanese women's wrestling scene got wiped out in the 2000s. But then starting around 2010, 2011, it feels like we see these little sparks start to reignite the wrestling scene. The British scene starts to come back alive. The Australian scene starts to come back alive. The Joshi scene over in Japan starts to come back alive. That's why we've got women coming out of this generation like Kana or Asuka in WWE, Kairi Sane, Io Shirai. Out of Australia and New Zealand, you have your Dakota Kais and your Tony Storms and your Rhea Ripley's. The British scene has been one of the strongest in the world for the last 4 or 5 years now. We're both big fans of Jenny. Jenny is going to be just a tremendous character for them. I just look at everything, and you can't diminish what you see on the main roster right now. One of the biggest wrestling stars in the WWE is from Ireland, in Becky Lynch. She's got a real chance to be the first female ever to be the true face of the company if they build around her. So, the last 5 or 6 years have really seen a resurrection of the different wrestling scenes around the world. And I am thankful that you and I have a chance to sit here and cover these shows like we do, because it's the embodiment of Triple H and company taking advantage of that groundswell of organic wrestling support, where we see a showcase of women from Japan, from Australia, New Zealand, from Britain, from Canada, from Ireland, from wherever they may come from Brazil. The Brazilian wrestling scene of all places is starting to wake back up. So it's just a great time to be a wrestling fan. We have an international pool of talent now. The roster has never been this diverse in almost every measurable fashion. And so, I think it's a testament to the quality of wrestling. Good wrestling can never be held down for too long. I think good wrestling always rises to the top. And I also think it's a testament to the current generation of athletes, male and female, who are really establishing an identity for themselves. And what's really going to be cool is to see what the next generation looks like. Because we see this generation, your Tony Storms, your Dakota Kais. I want to see the women that follow them in the next 5 to 10 years, that are inspired by them to get into the business. That is going to be a true sight to behold.
Yeah, that's going to be incredible. And with the women that are out there right now to inspire those that are coming up the pipeline, I think women's wrestling is just going to be improving by leaps and bounds in the next 10 to 15 years. We won't even be able to recognize what's going on right now. So I'm all for it. I think it's going to be a great thing. It's just going to be good for the business as a whole. So yeah, other than the women's side on NXT UK, we had a crackerjack of a championship match with Pete Dunne and Jordan Devlin. These two guys, we gush over Pete Dunne all the time. The man's amazing. If you don't know Jordan Devlin is another amazing talent out of Ireland, trained by Finn Balor. You can definitely see the Finn Balor's influence on Jordan Devlin. He's been doing some amazing stuff over the last couple of weeks in UK, doing some nice little heel work, saying that he's going to become the face and change the name to NXT Ireland, featuring wrestlers from the UK. I thought that was a nice little touch. But this match was everything that you expect to see in a Pete Dunne match. But Jordan Devlin definitely held his own. Probably my favorite championship match that Pete Dunne's been in on NXT UK so far. And that's saying something, because his match against Danny Burch was pretty amazing. But this one this one had some good psychology, some good counters by Devlin. Beautiful Spanish fly off of the steps on out to the outside, and then another super Spanish fly off the top rope that Dunn kicked out of. Pete Dunne picks up the win with the submission with his good old finger manipulation. Just one hell of a solid championship match.
I got to throw the gauntlet down here at you. I really have to just kind of throw this out there because I think, given the situation that we see on the main roster, this almost begs the question. Pete Dunne has been the WWE United Kingdom champion for over 300 days now, if I'm not mistaken. I'll verify that here. With his most recent successful title defense, I am pretty sure he's gone over 300 days. So, he's well beyond that. I think he's over 500 days now.
Yeah, that's ringing a bell. I think they mentioned something about that. So,
yeah, he's 557 days. It looks like as of today. So 557 days as the NXT UK champion. That is not only by far the longest reign of any significant champion in the WWE system right now. That is bordering on Okada-esque. When you look at what Kazuchika Okada did with the IWGP title over the last 3 years in New Japan before dropping it this past summer to Kenny Omega. You're talking about 600 days. That's, we're getting close to the 2-year mark for Pete Dunne. And there's no signs of him slowing down at any point. He's weathered some injuries. He's managed to keep that title on lockdown. So I'm going to throw this at you. I'm just going to be point blank. Is Pete Dunne the best singles champion in the WWE system right now?
Arguably, I would say that he could very well be. I'm not sure who. I've got to think about this now a little bit. Obviously, with the length of his reign, yes, that says he is. I would put Seth Rollins possibly in there. He's the current Intercontinental Championship. He's had a hell of an amazing year. It's kind of tapered off here at the end. This poor feud with Dean Ambrose really isn't the fire feud that it should be.
It's just collapsing on itself, really. Most of everything on Raw.
Well, yeah, exactly. But you put Seth Rollins' year that he's had, the defenses he had with his Intercontinental Championship there for a while, I'd put him a close second if right behind Pete Dunne. But those two would probably be my top 2 champions right now. I mean, AJ had a long run with it, but it was kind of a middling run. There wasn't anything really, really amazingly substantial that stood out. So yeah, I would say, yeah, Pete Dunne probably is the best current singles champion out there.
It's a toss up for me. I think if we're looking at like in-ring quality, I echo your sentiments on Seth Rollins exactly. Though if we're just going by the first half of 2018, Seth Rollins had one of the best first half of the years that I've seen in a long time. From the moment he ran that gauntlet match in February in the build-up to Elimination Chamber, to his work at WrestleMania and the Greatest Royal Rumble, and just kind of carrying the Raw brand over the spring with those Intercontinental title open challenges, he was definitely on pace to have one of the all-time great years. But he really has kind of fallen back a lot. Really, I think since the Dolph Ziggler title loss, when he started feuding with Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre, I think that's when it started. And the Dean Ambrose feud has only accelerated the decline. But when you're talking about Pete Dunne, you're talking about someone who he may not have the cachet that a Seth Rollins would because he's not on the main roster programming. But he's one of the best workers in the world. He's one of the toughest, to be certain. And he's definitely one of the most renowned in the WWE system by virtue of having held that title for so long. So I mean, it is subjective at the end of the day, but I think you're right. I think there is a case to be made that you could argue Pete Dunne is the best singles champion in the company right now. Certainly the most respect worthy. I don't know that I would consider Daniel Bryan a respect worthy champion, considering the way he won it. Now, if he defends the title a couple of times, that'll change. Brock Lesnar never shows up, so it's kind of hard to respect him. Uh, I mean, you've got Tommaso Ciampa, which you talk about a match that I would put money to see. Give me Pete Dunne and Tommaso Ciampa title for title. That would be a hell of a match.
Yes, take my money and run right there.
So, I mean, that's Triple H idea for you. Make that match happen. So, but
yeah,
it's tough. It's a tough call.
Yeah, Ciampa would be maybe the only other one that would come to mind other than Seth Rollins and Pete Dunne, but he hasn't held the belts quite long enough to be considered. Although his defenses that he's had they've all been stellar matches. So if he can string another 2 or 3 of those together, who knows? He might be in the conversation as well. As well as our listeners do, that I'm a huge Ciampa mark, as are you. So I think that he definitely has a chance to put his name in the running on that for sure.
It's going to be fascinating to see where they go in 2019, because obviously they want to establish NXT and NXT UK as viable brands in their own marketplaces. They want them to succeed, but the ultimate goal of NXT UK and NXT is to produce talent for the main roster. And so I'm just curious, I look at guys like Pete Dunne. We see the greatness in them, and we just wonder, when is it his time? Should he keep the UK title and just establish that brand and never really leave the UK? Or should they take a crack at him on the main roster? Because Lord knows, if you've watched Raw lately, they need all the help they can get. We're not talking about a show that's overflowing with talent. Ever since Roman Reigns had to leave because of his illness, the company has been without its top star. And that has filtered down through the rest of the card on Raw on Monday nights and just made it almost completely unwatchable. And so, would a Pete Dunne type draft pick help? Were they to do some sort of superstar shakeup or draft this winter? Absolutely. Pete Dunne to Raw would be a huge boost to that show's fortunes. So it just makes you wonder, where are they going to go in 2019? How long will this championship reign of Pete Dunne's last? Can it go another 100 days? Or will it come to an end in 2019? And there's a lot of question marks surrounding him. But one question mark that we don't have is his talent. We know he's talented. We know that he can really get it done. So I definitely look forward to seeing what he decides to do next year, what the company decides to do with him.
Absolutely. One other big standout that came out of the UK shows, the Coffey Brothers and Wolfgang. A couple weeks ago, they did they tacked Trent Seven after a match, and we hadn't seen Trent Seven for a couple episodes. And then last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess last week, because they do the 2 episodes now, Sid Scala announced that he was going to have a match against Joe Coffey, pretty much, announcing his day of death. That happened this week, or was supposed to happen, but Sid Scala came out and announced that he was not medically cleared, and then announced his replacement in Tyler Bate. So that was a pretty good match. Mark Coffey and Wolfgang came out. Trent Seven showed his face, obviously limping. So as you kind of couldn't figure out what happened if you've watched wrestling at all in your life, this led to a DQ finish. But then the Bruiserweight came out, and for the first time on the NXT UK scene, we have seen British strong style altogether, possibly leading to a future confrontation with the Coffey Brothers and Wolfgang. I, for one, am all down for that. I think that would be one heck of a a good little trios matchup.
I definitely think that there are plans in the works to get that match out there sooner rather than later. Like, if I had to put money down, I would say that match is coming soon. Maybe as soon as January, which we'll touch on here at the end of the show. Some news broke this week that I think NXT UK fans are going to be quite happy with. So,
yeah, and other than that, most of the rest of the NXT UK stuff, it was all solid matches. You're not going to go wrong watching anything there. We had a couple of Eddie Dennis matches, a couple tag matches. I think they're just looking right now to establish some tag teams for the upcoming tag titles. Zach Gibson and James Drake are working together, so they're looking good. So they may be a contender in there. And then that's pretty much everything for NXT UK, unless you have anything to add into there, Biff.
At the moment, no. We're definitely going to touch on some ideas when we talk about the announcement of the upcoming Takeover special from Blackpool. But what I would like to do, if we have a moment, is kind of touch on 205 Live and then jump back into regular NXT. Because I think, personally, outside of the Rhea Ripley match, the most shocking match of the week was on NXT this week, but I don't think it was shocking in a good way. Which maybe we could go straight into NXT this week and touch on last week's matches as well when we get a shot at it. But I'm very interested to hear your opinion on the Keith Lee Lars Sullivan match. I think there's a lot of interesting kind of tidbits swirling around this match for reasons that are, not all good. But I was very, very interested in the finish of this match. I did not see this coming at all. So I'm curious to get your take on it, quite frankly.
Wow. You know what? I honestly wasn't sure what to expect from this match when it was announced. Especially as you alluded to, the news that has kind of come out about Lars Sullivan. Lars ended up picking up the win over Keith Lee in what actually ended up being a surprisingly entertaining hoss fight. It was actually a really good match between two large individuals here. If you've never seen Keith Lee wrestle, the man is 300 plus pounds.
He's amazing.
And does stuff that you should not be doing at that weight. Like that corkscrew over the top rope to the outside. Like, I'm sorry, that man should not be doing moves like that. But yeah, no, it was an amazingly competitive and interesting match, and I was a little shocked to see Lars go over, but
I honestly was too. I did not expect it. I almost expected like a cluster finish where someone would run out and cost the match, and it would just be devolve into anarchy. I did not expect Lars Sullivan to get the relatively clean win. I did not expect Lars Sullivan to be standing tall over Keith Lee, of all people. This, to me, is... honestly, it feels like a misfire for NXT. And this is interesting, because NXT doesn't misfire like this much, at least not this blatantly. They'll have decisions that kind of catch you off guard sometimes, but you have enough faith in them to kind of see it through. This is one of the rare times where I feel like they misfired. And they did the wrong thing. And we'll have to see how it plays out. But I don't know, given how physically talented Keith Lee is, just looking at him as a physical specimen, I don't know that, having him do the fall here for the outgoing Lars Sullivan was the right thing. Especially given the fact that, number one, Lars Sullivan may not be back in NXT. He's starting to get ready for his main roster run. And two, given the things that happened around Lars Sullivan this week on his social media feeds, it just came across as, exceedingly poor timing. That so much they couldn't help. But, the decision to go with Keith Lee and have him lose to Lars Sullivan like that, so close to his debut, that's a bitter pill to swallow, I think, for a lot of Keith Lee fans, which I am by counting myself among them.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I could think about the social media thing is that this was taped before any of that really broke. So that was, like you said, just kind of unfortunate timing. Um, and the only thing I can really think about as to why they put Lars over cleanly is that they are prepping him for a potential monster run on the main roster. Perhaps they just wanted him to go out on top, looking like the beast that they're hoping that he's going to be. So in the long run, I don't think that this loss is going to really hurt Keith Lee. The
No,
man is
yeah,
he's talented enough that he's going to overcome this. Uh, it's not going to, in a little while from now, we're not going to be actually, even remembering that this happened for the most part. So, but yeah, a little bit of a shocking development there for sure.
it's an interesting time in NXT. I feel like we're kind of in the middle of a transitional period with uh, some people about ready to go up, some people about ready to ascend. Today's episode, EC3 is back, and he's looks like he's going to be feuding with Bobby Fish of the Undisputed Era, or at least Bobby Fish to start with. It could devolve into the Undisputed Era in total. He did have that match with Adam Cole recently where he got hurt. This is kind of his big comeback. So EC3 looks like he's about to ascend up into a role of prominence for the brand. You got Matt Riddle and Keith Lee, the aforementioned Keith Lee, that are kind of the smart indie darlings that are going to bring huge reactions from the Full Sail crowd as they grow and develop their WWE styles. It just feels like we're in the middle of transitioning some of the older stars like Aleister Black out of the picture and bringing some new stars in to kind of cover the load. And that makes for interesting television. It also makes it very, very sensitive to any type of change. And I did not expect Keith Lee to be losing this early. I feel like that's a change in their philosophy. And it just didn't sit well with me. I can't really put my finger on why exactly. I just did not like the decision to beat Keith Lee this early. It just feels wrong to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I kind of think that it should have gone to maybe somebody interfering, something like that. Kind of a screwy finish. Protect both guys, but I guess it is what it is, and we'll see where they go from there. What did you think of EC3's match against Marcel Barthel?
I dropped out right there. Do you hear me again?
Oh, yeah, you're back.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I dropped off for momentarily there. Can you repeat that last question?
Yeah, no problem. I was just you touched on EC3. What did you think of his match against Marcel Barthel there?
Something, I have never been a huge EC3 fan. I wouldn't say that I was a hater because that's too strong a term. But I did follow him as he kind of rose up and became a star down at Impact Wrestling. And so when he made the jump to NXT, I kind of viewed him as like this is going to sound weird, like a poor man's Bobby Roode almost, where he's technically competent in the ring and he's got a good character, but he's a step below like that classic NXT top tier worker, like a Sami Zayn, a Johnny Gargano, a Finn Balor, those kind of athletes that are going to go flying around the arena and just really get your blood pumping. I never viewed EC3 on that level. Having said that, I don't know if it's what he's picking up in the WWE system, whether I'm just seeing him in a different light now that he's in NXT and kind of the stink of the bad TNA years are kind of washing off of him. I am starting to come around on him. I really am. He is starting to make an impact. I still don't know that I'm going to buy him as a major star on the main roster. But I think he has the tools to be a star on some level. Watching him here today, again, it's just the little nuances that he's picking up where He doesn't feel quite as clunky. He feels a little bit more fluid. The main thing is I think he looks more comfortable. Whether that's because he's in a better environment in Full Sail or whether, he's just feeling like he's getting an opportunity to advance his career, I don't know. But, just seeing him get more comfortable in the role, because he hasn't had that much to do in NXT since he's came over. He's had his moments, but he hasn't really had that real standout showcase moment yet where it's like, okay, now he's arrived. Maybe we're coming to that point with the Undisputed Era. If anybody could give him that moment, it would definitely be the Undisputed Era, whether it's with Bobby Fish or Adam Cole. But I am very excited to see where they go with him in the future, because I think he's got the tools to be a big player if he could just finish putting it all together. And I like what I've seen so far. They're taking their time with him, and I think that's the best course with him, personally.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The man's always been a great promo, and he showed it again tonight. His promo afterwards, it was great. Like, there was nothing wrong with it, nothing you can really critique on it. But it's always been the in-ring work for me with him that, as you were saying, was just lagged a little bit behind. And I mean, he's never going to be a Kyle O'Reilly, a Sami Zayn, some of these guys, a Johnny Gargano. He's never, ever, even if he gets to be the best EC3 that he can be, he's never going to match those kind of guys in terms of in-ring ability. But as long as they get him to a serviceable point, which I think he's well on his way to getting to, I think that he's going to be an okay wrestler. And actually, I kind of think that he's going to be one of those guys that does better on the main roster than on NXT, to be honest. He's more of kind of that style already. They want you more to be more promo heavy. So therefore, I think when he does get the call up, I think he's going to excel on the main roster, to be perfectly honest.
I will co-sign with you 1,000% on that one. He has definitely got the look of someone that will do more on the main roster than he will in NXT. I don't think he's the best fit in NXT, but he's absolutely got the kind of look and character that someone on the main roster could really make hay out of. So I'm 100% in agreement with you on that
one. We also had a nice little tag team match that started off this episode of NXT with the Brit-Am Brawlers and Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan versus the Mighty. This was actually a really fun little tag team match. Nice to see them get the time that they deserved. Burch and Lorcan ended up picking up the win, and then the Mighty attack after the loss kind of put the hurt on Burch and Lorcan a little bit. Really fun match. I thought it was a great way to kick off NXT this week, especially since last week's was the Takeover recap. So really, other than the Candice LeRae Nikki Cross match, there really wasn't anything to talk about on NXT last week, and we will touch on that match shortly. But
yeah,
it was a good opening match.
I was going to say, yeah, Nikki Cross and Candice LeRae did have a good match last week for sure, but the post Takeover episodes that they film before the actual Takeover specials are never anything too remarkable. You generally have to get a week out before you can kind of get back into the groove with these NXT shows. But as far as Lorcan and Burch goes, I have really done a complete 180 on this tag team over the last 6 to 8 months. I did not see the appeal in them until I actually started watching them, which just goes to show you that people in NXT know better than I do. They know what I want before I want it. They serve it up to me all nice and heated and ready to rock and roll. We were talking about the Australian wave of talent. The Mighty don't kneel. TM61, the Mighty, however you would like to remember them or recognize them, they've never quite clicked in the WWE system, but they are of that same generation. We know they have talent. I think the heel turn has done them well a little bit. They're a little bit less nondescript than they were. But I'm a huge Lorcan and Burch fan. Just any tag team that goes out there just to beat the piss out of you, you're going to get some high marks from me because that's quintessential tag team greatness. I just love the people that make it look real, and Birch and Lorcan do an amazing job of making it look real. So I always have time for a nice slice of tag team goodness. Tonight, no exception. Great opener, as you said. Really fun tag team match.
Yeah, Birch and Lorcan really do, like you said, they remind me of a good old throwback brawler team. Kind of like, say, like the Brain Busters or somebody like that. A little Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard moves in there. Guys that just kind of go out there and they want to hurt you. But they have the technical know-how behind them to make themselves look good too. So I'm with you on that. I'm really coming around to them. I think they're a great addition to a great tag scene that's down in NXT right now.
It's definitely picking up. I think that the next couple of months are going to really tell the tale about how they're going to develop that tag team scene fully. But they've got a lot of good tag teams, and they've got a lot of promising people on the way up. So 2019 is going to be a fun year to be an NXT fan. I feel like we're in a period now where we're about to see this influx of all this new talent, and we'll have to wait and see how they decide to use it. But between the call-ups that we could see for the Royal Rumble season or next WrestleMania season and the new signings, they signed Walter this week. We'll have to see where Walter's going. If he's going to go to the NXT UK, if he comes to Florida, we'll just have to wait and see on that one. But the good rule of thumb, the more people you have on the roster that make it look real, the better off you are. And for their part, Birch and Lorcan do an amazing job at making it look real. So I can't give them enough praise. They're a great tag team.
Yeah, and then before we move into 205 Live, do you want to touch on that Candice LeRae Nikki Cross match a little bit?
It was frankly, it was the only thing that really stood out for me from last week's episode. And I think Keith Lee looked good. Of course, Lars Sullivan getting the Rockstar treatment on the way out because he's about to go up to the main roster. So he had a little squash match of his own last week. But, as far as the Nikki Cross and Candice LeRae match goes, I'm kind of in the same boat that I was with the Keith Lee Lars Sullivan match from last night. I don't know exactly what they're doing with Candice LeRae. It doesn't feel like she's ever gotten that big marquee win to kind of start herself out. She feels like she loses way more than she wins. And it kind of perplexes me. You would think, being Johnny Gargano's wife and having that kind of cachet from the independent scene that, her star power coming into the promotion would have carried her a little bit better than it has. But no, it just feels like she's just destined to constantly be the bridesmaid. I will never diminish Nikki Cross. I love Nikki Cross. I am a huge fanboy of Nikki Cross. So anytime that Nikki Cross gets on TV is a win for me. It was a good match, but again, at the end of it, I'm just left scratching my head. I don't know what Candice has to do to break through. Because right now she feels more like an accessory to Johnny Gargano's story than she does being a true character in her own right. And that's a waste of her talent as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Like, they make her the first woman, or so they say, to kick out of the purge from Nikki Cross in that match, and then yet let her lose clean. And, you're right. It is a little perplexing. I'm not saying that I necessarily want to see Nikki Cross lose, because we all love ourselves the Nikki Cross. But you're right. Candice just seems like she's kind of shadowing Johnny Gargano's story. Maybe that's what they're going for. She's descended into darkness with him, and maybe one of them comes to the light and the other doesn't. Maybe that's where the story's going. I don't really know, but it's a little strange, because she's definitely got the talent to be a key player down there, and it just doesn't seem like they're really doing anything of note with her. It's interesting. I'm not sure what the plan is there.
I will say this to their credit. I talked about this with the Keith Lee decision, and I'll repeat it here. While I think that they've kind of misstepped on Candice LeRae. I do have faith that NXT could turn her around if they wanted to. I'm not giving up hope on her by any stretch. I would just like to see her have a better 2019 than she has in 2018.
Yes, I will totally echo that sentiment. Moving into 205 Live. Shall we start with last week's episode and then move into this? Because they kind of feed into each other somewhat, so it probably would be the way to go, I think.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I mean, we never should pass up a chance to celebrate a Grand Metalik match or a Tony Nese match for that matter. So that works for me. Last week's episode of 205 Live was pretty special, I thought. Was bookended by two really good matches. I continue to be impressed by Noam Dar. I feel like Noam Dar has really started to get a few more opportunities over the last couple of months. He was in that first real big episode of NXT UK, and then he has started to appear on 205 Live more now that his knee injury has kind of healed up a little bit. And, of course, Tony Nese has really been building up a slow but steady wave of support. Of course, he crossed over to NXT down in Florida, had a match with Johnny Gargano a couple of weeks back that was very critically acclaimed. And now he's kind of foisted himself into the title picture, kind of palling around with Buddy Murphy a little bit. So Tony Nese and Noam Dar, of course, they opened up the show last week. Tony Nese picked up a big win. We could talk about the Metalik TJP match, kind of continuing that little rivalry that TJP has with the Luchadors. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the pairing of Akira Tozawa and Brian Kendrick. We didn't see them last night, but they were referenced last night backstage. But we saw Akira Tozawa and Brian Kendrick in action last week, and I'm curious as to what you think of this pairing. Is it clicking with you yet, or does it still feel a little awkward to you?
It still feels a little awkward to me right now, but I think that that's by design. I think they're playing off of their history a little bit. Tozawa and Kendrick had a great series of matches going back, I guess, what was it, last year now, where Tozawa was kind of Kendrick was Tozawa's mentor, teaching him the rules, the tricks of the trade, and then turning on him, which led to that fantastic street fight that they ended up having. So I kind of like the fact that they're keeping things a little awkward, that neither one of them necessarily really trusts the other right at the moment. And that's due to the history. And that's just amazing storytelling and continuity in my books. So for them to do it and to keep it going, I think is pretty stellar. And I think as it keeps going, I think it'll be a good team.
They definitely have potential, and I think that's what kind of, we say this every week, and I feel like a broken record at this point, but it's worth repeating. 205 Live is the land of potential. If you have wrestling talent on any level, then NXT 205 Live, you've got potential to break out and become a star. And I think that's true here on 205 Live, just like it is down at NXT. Akira Tozawa and Brian Kendrick as a tag team, I may not have seen that coming a couple of weeks ago when Brian Kendrick kind of had this sudden babyface turn. But I'm willing to see it play out because I know the talent level of all the people involved. It's the same principle with the main event last week. We talked about Grand Metalik taking on TJP. On the surface, TJP versus Grand Metalik, great match. I mean, two very strong workers. You know that they're going to get some time in the main event, so you know it's going to be a decent match. But, this whole deal with TJP working with the Luchadors and disrespecting them, it seems so insignificant. And yet, you know what? They're focusing on it. They're constantly making it a focal point of their storylines week to week. And it's starting to matter. And that's what I love about 205 Live. The matches are mattering. A Grand Metalik TJP match isn't just being put on for the heck of it. It's being put on because there are stakes involved. And we saw that play out last night. TJP complaining to Drake Maverick about why he's not getting more opportunities. And Maverick just point blank told him, you lost to Grand Metalik last week. What do you want from me? So that's the kind of continuity, the continuity that we need on our shows to keep us tuning in every week. 205 Live is doing a good job of providing that continuity that we crave as wrestling fans.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I'm not necessarily completely sold on is the Canales' involvement in that whole thing. Not sure where that's going. Um, but then again, that's partly Mike Canales has never been really my cup of tea. And really, he's only there to showcase his wife, Maria, as far as I'm concerned. So,
Yeah.
uh, not sure where they're going to go with him, but eh, one minor little dud on a show that's full of hits, I can accept that.
Yeah, I'm not a big Mike Canellis fan. I like Maria more than I do Mike, and I'm not a huge Maria fan either, not in WWE at least. But we'll see where it goes on that front, whether they are able to capture the interest or not. I do like the fact that they're getting an opportunity. If you take an opportunity and it doesn't work out, at least you got the opportunity. I'm
Yeah.
much more amenable to WWE taking a shot at getting Mike Kanellis over on 205 Live and taking a shot there than I am them saying, hey, let's see if Jinder Mahal can get over as the WWE champion out of nowhere. Like, if you're going to have an opportunity to start somewhere, start at 205 Live. That's what it's there for. Start at 205 Live, and if his character catches on, then you can go from there. So, but I'll never disrespect the guy as a performer. I mean, he works hard. And he's overcome a lot personally. I know to get back into this position. So on a personal level, kudos to him. But yeah, as in terms of a character, he doesn't really do much for me.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that kind of leads into this week's where we have the aforementioned Mike Canales taking on Noam Dar to start off this week's show. Uh, there's a there was the potential for a really really good match there. Uh, I thought that this was actually Mike Canales' best showing. Noam Dar was holding up his end, but it really just kind of led into a distraction when as Lucha House Party came out and Kalisto kicked Canales in the head. So this match really never got off the ground, but it was entertaining for a start, and it's a storyline progression. So there's nothing wrong with that for the opener. And we knew that we were going to have a crackerjack main event with the Tony Nese, Buddy Murphy tag versus Cedric Alexander and Mustafa Ali. So, to have a little starter just be nothing much, it was okay because it was just the first course on a great wrestling meal that was coming our way.
Yeah, like this week's opener wasn't as good as last week's. Noam Dar had a much better match with Tony Nese last week than he did here against Mike Kanellis. I'm glad Noam Dar picked up the win this week, even if it was with the help of Lucha House Party. But again, it's furthering the storyline, and so I can kind of forgive it. It's the same principle behind squash matches on these shows. We had a squash last night. Hideo Itami just absolutely murderballed his opponent, Levi Cruz, I believe his name was. You know what? I mean, would I prefer to see Hideo Itami tear the house down with Mustafa Ali in a 30-minute match on 205 Live? Yes. But they're advancing the storyline. They're getting Itami reestablished after his feud with Ali. They're going to reset things, give him a new direction, give him a new way to kind of, get himself over. And so I'm down for it because we know, sitting in the background, we've got that main event scheduled for us. We've got the main event to hold on to as our little slice of pie. And boy, was it a slice of pie last night. Alexander and Ali taking on Tony Nese and Buddy Murphy. I mean, you talk about one of the best matches of the week. That is right up there with the NXT UK Women's Championship match, as far as I'm concerned. And it's up there with Pete Dunne and Jordan Devlin as well. It was just a fantastic tag team match, back and forth. We say it each week. the three MVPs of 2018 205 Live, Buddy Murphy, Cedric Alexander, and Mustafa Ali. They go out and they're doing it all over again. Week in and week out, they just get it done. I have the highest of respect for all three. And no disrespect to Tony Nese either. He looks really good as well. And he's really come a long way. So kudos to all four guys for the main event last night. It was fantastic.
Oh, it was such a good match. I think right now for these four performers, it is pretty much impossible for these four to put on a bad match. And then you put them all into the same match, and you get what we got here. And that was just an absolute slice of wrestling in heaven. It was so good. Ali and Alexander work well as a team. They're the friends. They're doing what they need to do. The hot tag almost sequence to Cedric Alexander was beautiful.
So good.
When Buddy Murphy came out and pulled it, said, "Oh, I was just like marking out for that." I was like, "Oh no, they pulled it away from me." It was so well done, and this is like what tag team wrestling should be. Yeah, you need the hot tag in there, but you don't have to do the formulas that you see on the main roster all the time. The formula was in here, but you added new wrinkles and new twists, and you made it something special. And this is what tag team wrestling at its finest is. And these guys aren't even established tag teams. So when you get guys that are an established tag team and working together like that, it's just a thing of beauty. Sorry for that little side round.
No.
Got off on tag team wrestling somewhere in the chats earlier this week, and it's still sticking in my craw a little bit.
No, absolutely. I'm completely in your corner. I mean, tag team wrestling is my favorite type of wrestling. I would rather see a great tag team match than almost any other type of match. So, and I think, when all is said and done, the greatest match of the decade that I've seen so far in the WWE system has been a tag match. I still think the Revival and DIY from Toronto is the best match of the decade so far in the WWE system. So that's purely subjective on my part, but no, tag team wrestling when done right is amazing stuff.
And this was tag team wrestling done right. This main event had everything you need in a main event. And then it took both Ali and Alexander together to finish off and pin Murphy. So it kind of leads into some interesting questions as to where this main event scene is going. We know that Alexander has his contractually obligated rematch, but Ali is showing that he belongs in there too. Are we maybe moving towards a possible multi-man match coming up at the next maybe Royal Rumble or something? If you want to give me a three-way with Murphy, Alexander, and Ali, I'm going to be all over that. And if you want to turn it into a fatal four-way and throw Tony Nese in there, I don't think I'm going to be opposed to that either.
I don't know. I mean, I sit there and I'm just looking at 205 Live in general. I sit there and look at everything that we have in store, everything that, it's just kind of been building up to. I just, it just blows my mind that we get to sit here and watch this unfold week after week. I mean, it does not really sit there. Think about this for a second. Think about the quality that we're seeing every week on the show. And it's almost like we take it for granted because it's just been repeating itself so much. It's like my mind is blown, dude. I can't even. I'm verklempt. I need a moment. Talk amongst yourselves. I need a moment.
Yeah, no, they're knocking it out of the park every week, and it's so mind-boggling to me that you can have shows like NXT and 205 Live being produced by the same people that are putting out what you see on Raw and SmackDown.
Oh.
Now, admittedly, SmackDown wasn't that bad this week. It had some rough moments, but it had some good stuff in there. Where Raw was an absolute, I don't even know what to describe that with. That was just unbelievably bad.
Abomination of desolation.
Yeah, exactly. But then it's the same company, and you're putting out these two quality shows, or three quality shows when you throw in NXT UK in there as well, on a weekly basis. Why? Where's the disconnect? Like, I just don't get it some days.
I sometimes wonder, and this is subjective opinion. I don't have anything to base this off of, so I don't want anybody listening to think that I'm talking qualitatively here. This is just my opinion. I sometimes wonder if 205 Live and NXT are presented as they are to placate hardcore fans, whereas Vince and his cronies believe that this type of wrestling doesn't work for the mainstream fans. I don't buy that argument, but I wonder if that's what they think. Because, like you said, there's no reason that we should have this type of discrepancy between what we see on Monday and Tuesday, generally on Monday, but sometimes Tuesday can be pretty rough too, and what we see on Wednesday these days. Unless there's a deliberate belief that what we see on Wednesday won't work for the casual fans, which I disagree with. I can't really explain it myself. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, I'm at a total loss to that as well. But at least we have our Wednesdays to know that we are going to get our weekly fix of amazing wrestling. So once again, Alexander Ali, Murphy Nice, crackerjack of a main event, worth the time. 205 Live, like we say, it's not even a full hour, 45 minutes out of your day, and it's worth it every single week. Definitely the show to check out this week for sure.
Yeah, and as we get into the end of the year, we're going to be taking a look back at some of the highlights from both NXT and 205 Live over the last couple of months. It's been the biggest year for both shows, I would argue, in their respective runs. I think this year in 205 Live in particular has kind of saved it, at least for the moment. It's turned it around and given it an aura of respectability that it didn't have last year. As far as NXT goes, obviously with the expansion to NXT UK, huge deal. And some of the specials that they've run this year have just been otherworldly. So, it's the sky's the limit for both 205 Live and NXT moving forward. That's why I'm so glad that we get to cover it. And as we get into December, we'll have a chance to look back at some of the highlights because obviously things will slow down in December as we kind of reset the year and get ready for 2019. But we have plenty of stuff to look back on this year. So it's going to be a fun ride going down memory lane to some of these matches.
Absolutely. And to touch on some big news that broke this week, NXT UK has announced that they will be doing a NXT UK takeover, takeover Blackpool, I believe it is called. What are your thoughts on that, Biff?
Well, I tell you, when I heard this, I was pretty shocked because not only are they doing an extra takeover, but they're doing it very close to the time period that we'll be seeing Takeover Phoenix. Takeover Phoenix will be on January 26th, I believe, because I think the Rumble is on the 27th in January. I'm not sure that they released a specific date for the takeover coming from Blackpool. I can look that up right quick and see. I think tickets have gone on sale. I think it's January 12th. So about 2 weeks before Takeover Phoenix, we're going to be getting Takeover Blackpool. Now, granted, the talent pool is going to be different, most likely. I don't think you're going to see a big cross pollination between the people on NXT from Florida versus what you see on NXT UK. So you're going to have different storylines to follow, and you're going to have different angles to kind of keep track of. I have split opinion on it. On the one hand, I wonder if having a takeover special that close to Takeover Phoenix will diminish the takeover in Phoenix a little bit, kind of take the shine off of it, because you don't want to stack them too close together. You know, and that's what's really weird about this. Even though NXT and NXT UK are separate brands for the most part, there's enough crossover there, and they're all in the NXT system, so they do feel linked, kinda. Even though they're pretty, you know, organic storylines for both shows that don't cross over. You know, I still feel that link between them. So I am curious if it's too much too soon. Having said that, I am so glad that NXT UK is going to be treated on the same level as NXT down in Florida. It's tremendous that they get their shot at having their own takeover. And, you know, we've got, like, I think one match has been made official, and there's a couple of matches that are rumored to be coming down. I think the one official match that we know for sure that we can report on here is Rhea Ripley defending her NXT UK Championship, Women's Championship against Toni Storm in a rematch from last night. So that automatically is going to make this show a winner. There's no other way to you know, put it. I would be, you know, beyond shocked if we didn't see Mustache Mountain in some capacity. I would have to take a guess and say that we're probably getting a Pete Dunne championship defense. I wouldn't expect there not to be a UK title defense on the first takeover. So we'll see how that shakes out. But, you know, with Rhea Ripley and Toni Storm going at it and the specter of another UK championship match with Pete Dunne, it's going to be a fantastic show. And I'm looking forward to it very much so, because the more quality we get out of NXT and NXT UK, the less I have to watch on the main roster. And if Raw is any indication of how bad things are going to be for the next couple of months in the WWE main roster system, bring on every NXT UK takeover special you damn well can, Triple H, because we need it just to get through the slog that is Monday Night Raw right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not totally sure whether there'll be a championship defense. You know, are they leading to British Strong Style versus the Coffees and Wolfgang? Would that maybe be the takeover match? I would hope that they would do a championship defense on the first takeover, but who knows what they're thinking right now. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. Seeing Rhea Ripley and Toni Storm have the time that a takeover is going to give them to show what they can do is going to be amazing. I really, really look forward to that. And I'm sure that they're going to bring some amazing other matches out that we're going to enjoy immensely. I do also echo your sentiments that maybe it's a little too close to the other takeover, but being that it'll be the UK guys for the most part, and then the Florida guys will be before the Rumble there. I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. So we'll kind of see how they space those out going forward here. But I'm excited about that news. So it's just going to be another stellar entry into the content that's available on the network.
I'll tell you this much. Between the Wrestle Kingdom show, January 4th, NXT Takeover UK from Blackpool on the 12th, the two-shot with Takeover Phoenix and the Royal Rumble, which the Rumble's always a fun show, even if they don't hit the Rumble match itself out of the park. It's always fun to see them try. January is becoming quite the little epicenter for some great wrestling. I mean, there's a lot to look forward to in January, so I am eagerly anticipating getting through the next month, through the holiday season here, and getting into some outstanding wrestling, because I think really the first part of next year is going to be just a fantastic whirlwind of amazing shows. So
yeah, absolutely. Then the other kind of big news that broke this week was just after announced for his big push to the main roster, Mr. Lars Sullivan gets himself into a little bit of hot water over some past social media activity that he's had. What are your thoughts on this, Biff?
Well, I'm going to be 100% transparent here. I have not seen every forum post that was allegedly made. I have seen some of them. So if there are posts that were made that I did not see, I can't speak to those. What I did see was troubling in a lot of respects. Some of it was more political, kind of troll baity kind of stuff, and he has apparently on some level, to some sources, claimed that these were not his actual views, that he was actually trolling people on the forum, and he was trying to get a rise out of people, which it doesn't necessarily excuse the behavior. It helps me to, what's the word I'm looking for, put this incident into a more clear context. Like, yeah, it was a dumb, immature thing to do, but as long as you don't actually go around spouting homophobic, racist, diatribes backstage, we can work with it. We can work and move forward. This is the tough part when you get into like social media and stuff. It's like sometimes there are things that are taken out of context. There are some things that are said in ignorance. There are some things that people are just stupid for having said. I'm sure Lars Sullivan regrets having said it now because it could cause trouble with his main roster debut. It's happened to other people in the company. They've had damning stuff come out from social media that cost them their jobs. Do I think Lars Sullivan should be fired? No, I don't think he should be fired. He should definitely sit down with someone in the company and kind of lay out what all happened and why it happened, and make sure that he understands that it can't happen in the future. But I also think that there's something to be said for a tempered reaction here, because the one thing that will hurt us as a society more than anything is when we shut off discourse. And when we unilaterally condemn somebody and just never, care to hear them speak again, it's not always the best course. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. And I think, as far as Lars Sullivan goes, I don't know him. I've never met the guy. I can't tell you what he's really like. People apparently have said backstage that he's an absolute sweetheart. And they love him, and they think that he is, just a big cuddly teddy bear. And then you see these posts, and you question, this guy seems like a real jerk. I don't know what was going through his mind when he posted it. Until we see something formal, I don't think he's commented formally on it one way or the other. So, if he does make a formal apology about it or a formal comment on it and say, yes, this was me and this is what happened, I'm at least willing to hear the explanation. But if anything, above and beyond anything else, this is just, once again, a testimony for, being responsible on social media. What you post on the internet will eventually come back and find you one day. Nothing stays buried on the internet for long. So you need to exercise extreme caution before you say something stupid, even if you're just trying to troll people and just trying to get a laugh out of people. Context disappears over time, and now look where he's at. So, we'll see what happens on that front. But overall, it's a very unfortunate circumstance for all involved, given, how close he was to his main roster push. This is definitely not what WWE wants to see get embroiled with, especially if anything more is found out that pushes it further into the front pages of the news sites. So, we'll just have to wait and see. But hopefully things work out for everybody involved.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm with you. I haven't seen everything that came out, but what has come out was not very flattering for Mr. Sullivan there. Um, I don't think as of right now, I've seen a lot of people calling for his head, call for his job. He shouldn't get the push. I honestly don't think right at the moment that it's even going to derail his push. We've seen other stuff like this happen in the past, and people more or less get a warning, and WWE tells them, like, hey, okay, we understand this happened in the past, but if it happens in the future, like, see ya, you're gone.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking that's where things are going to sit right now. Um, it is concerning, and like you said, we don't know exactly what the context was. Um, some of the sites that, especially the one site that did break this, it sounded almost like a personal vendetta by that site against Lars Sullivan for something. So I don't know if that's is all playing into this as well. So it's something worth keeping an eye on. But I honestly think within a couple of weeks, it's more or less going to disappear, and we're going to forget that it ever happened.
It's a weird story, to be certain. It's a very weird story, because I know I got what you were saying too. There were other people that pointed that out. It felt like there was almost some sort of personal vendetta going on behind the scenes there, and it was kind of weird how that came out like it did. But nobody wins in this scenario. Everybody loses on some level. The hope is that we can all learn from it and move on and be better people from it. Because if there's one thing that I just am so tired of, it's people sticking their foot in their mouth and saying something stupid that they know they're going to regret. I just wish that we could get to a point where people could treat each other with respect until they deem it not worthy of respect. Like, that's how I wish we could live our lives. If you don't know somebody, treat them with respect until they give you a reason not to respect them.
Absolutely.
Is that so damn hard? I mean, honestly,
Apparently, for some people,
apparently it is. I guess I don't know. I guess I'm just old fashioned. So.
Oh yeah. Well, other than that, I don't know that there's any other talking points we have this week. You got anything else you want to bring up, Biff?
Well, just to kind of put a touchstone. Good golly, you can tell I need to go back to bed. It's too early in the morning to be recording. Just to put a ribbon on, some of what we had talked about earlier at the start of the show and what we talked about last week. This is going to be our final show on YouTube. At least it's our final planned show. We'll be making the move hopefully to Twitch next week. With the rest of the LIP family. They've invited us to come onto their channel. Los Ingobernables podcast, of course, is a family of wrestling-oriented podcasts, of which Grounds for Development is a part of. You hear us give the plugs out at the end of the show for Two Guys, One Sport, Connoisseurs of Wrestling, Shooting Debris, Don Sal's show when he comes back with his material. We're all under the same banner. We all work to help each other out. And so we're creating a Twitch channel where all the shows will be located in one central source. If you're a fan of Grounds for Development, if you're a fan of the Connoisseurs of Wrestling, of Shooting Debris, of Two Guys, One Sport, you get everything under one umbrella. So we're looking forward to the move. We're just trying to get all the bells and whistles taken care of. Obviously, the holiday season coming up, going to be really fun, really hectic. Greg, we're looking forward to having you on the Connoisseurs of Wrestling. That looks like that's going to happen in December. Talk a little Stampede Wrestling, so that's going to be a fun show. Looking forward to that. I know people have been aching for some Stampede coverage. It's by far one of the most requested promotions that we've gotten when we've done our polling. So Greg will be guest hosting on Connoisseurs of Wrestling in December. Looking forward to that very much so. Just all sorts of stuff going on. You know, the holiday season is always fun, even outside of the wrestling community. But a big thank you to everyone that supported us here on YouTube over the last few months. You know, I mean, it's not easy to start a new podcast. It's really not. There's a lot of growing pains involved with it. You're trying to establish a rapport with the people you're working with. You try to get into the routine of getting everything done. And Greg, you of course know full well as I do that real life does not always want to cooperate with us, and sometimes it can be a slog to take care of personal commitments, especially when you got so much going on. So, you know, if anything, you know, if you like what you hear that we're doing, you know, just pound that like button for us. Give us a subscribe to this channel. The archives will be remaining up, so you can go back and keep track of all the other shows we've done here. But we'll be moving to Twitch next week. Looking forward to it. Join us over there and just let us know, hey, we like what you're doing. We want to hear more of it, because that's vindication for us to keep going and providing this content. We love doing what we do, but without the fans listening, you know, we ain't nothing. So we look forward to the move to Twitch. We hope that it's going to be a boon for everybody, and we look forward to seeing y'all over there.
And I completely echo all of that. Looking forward to talking some Stampede on Connoisseurs of Wrestling coming up. That is my introduction to wrestling, came through that promotion. And I have some very, very fond memories and some not so fond memories, but we'll touch on that on Connoisseurs when the time comes. Should be a fun show. If you want to get a hold of us, you can contact me on either the Grounds for Development website. Send an email. We'll respond to you. Hit us up on our Twitter account, Grounds for Dev1, or on my personal Twitter, GW Klein75 at I was going to give you my email, but GW Klein75 is the Twitter handle. And you can also catch me hanging out in the daily, mostly at Cage Side Seats, but I do pop into the other threads every now and then. Look forward to conversing with all of you. Where can they find you, Biff?
I'm at Cage Side Seats generally during the days as well. Sometimes in the nightly thread as well. Just depends on the day. But you can always follow us here, Grounds for Development. We bring you that great 205 live NXT content every Thursday morning. We'll be guest hosting with Taker's Minion along with Crazy Chris Colgan tomorrow night on Two Guys One Sport. That's going to be the final YouTube show for them. That'll be dropping at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Or I'm sorry, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. 8 p.m. Central on tomorrow. No, I'm sorry. It's tonight. I'm sorry. It's today is Thursday. Yeah, so it will be tonight. Okay, so I got another podcast to do tonight. Be sure to join us at Two Guys One Sport. Taker's Man and I'll be filling in for George. You can catch George Atsavis and myself, Legends Lover, and Taker's Minion, the Connoisseurs of Wrestling, every Monday evening. That show is at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. If you need an escape from Raw, which, judging by the last couple of weeks, you absolutely do, come on the Connoisseurs of Wrestling. We'll have our next Hall of Fame induction episode on this coming Monday. Of course, we mentioned that Greg the Hold will be guest hosting on an episode coming up in December. We'll get that date finalized and announce that next week. And some other cool stuff on the way with some different projects that we have kicking that we'll be announcing in the short term, the near future. So you can kind of find me all over the place. But you know what? You can always find me at the Charlotte Cigar Lounge, the unofficial official sponsor of the Grounds for Development Southern Command Center. So if you like stogies, come enjoy a good smoke, get you a nice glass of cognac, kick back and relax. And the Biff Meister will regale you with his acumen of history, wrestling, and philosophy knowledge over a brilliant cigar in a fun, friendly, and casual setting in Uptown Charlotte. So, Uptown Cigar Lounge of Charlotte.
One of these days.
I just created a sponsor out of nowhere, so yeah, that's cool.
One of these days, you're going to be surprised, and I'm going to walk through that door and share a cigar with you.
I'm going to squeal with joy. I've already promised Angel that we'll go to Vegas one day, and now I got a promise from you that we'll enjoy a nice cigar over at the lounge in Charlotte. It's kind of become a home away from home. I'm developing rich man's taste on a poor man's budget, so having lots of fun. But it's definitely worth trying once just to say that you've tasted the high life. So
right on. Well, that is another episode of Grounds for Development. Thank you for joining us, and please continue giving us your support.
You guys take care. Have a good one.